One of the things that I've written about and colleagues have written about is this sort of curious dichotomy in the labour market that for many people life has never been more difficult in getting a job, and yet when I talk to companies like yours, the primary concern is how do we win the war for talent, this notion that companies are finding it very hard to get people with the skills they need. So how do you see the war for talent? How does America win or do better in that war for talent?
So I do believe that the war for talent is here, and I think it's going to increase over the next few years as in companies like ours, a large portion of our technical engineering workforce retire. It's simple math, right? And
what percentage of that is that at DuPont?
You know, in the U.S., we've estimated that we could lose up to 40% of our U.S. workforce over the next 7 years. They will be fully pension eligible and on average tend to retire at that age. So we need to renew at a manufacturing level, operations and maintenance. We need to renew at an engineering level. We need to renew at a PhD scientist level. And these are all things that are very important to us in order to be able to continue to create value for our customers.
Now, why is it all coming up now? There's this sort of, was there a particular generation of, it says the baby boomers.
Baby boomers, right? And there are a lot of us. And right now, and I don't think we have kept up in the education system with producing the number of engineers and scientists that we need. You know, only about 14 to 16% of kids who graduate from college are in science or engineering. And you compare that to the EU, where it's 24%. You compare that to China or Korea, where it's closer to 40%. And I think the US, we need to make sure we're arming our kids with the right skill sets to be able to take on the jobs of the future. And I think they're going to be more science-based and engineering-based than they have been.
I mean, does it really matter to you as a company what America does per se? You know, if you've got a world full of people that have talents, because I mean, there's this notion that maybe multinationals like yours have increasingly become like helicopters. They can sort of hover over an economy and move elsewhere if the education system doesn't produce the science graduates it needs. You'll just go to China and whatever.
You know, well, we are a global company, so we operate in over 70 countries around the world. The U.S. is still the largest marketplace in the world. And the U.S. tends to be ahead from a technology and a science standpoint in order to be able to absorb new technologies and move them forward. Now, that's changing, but the facts are that we have large manufacturing base in the United States. We have large research and development centers here in the United States, and we've invested a lot of capital, and that capital does not move, right? So if we have a large plant site in the U.S. that employs 800 workers, that plant site, hundreds of millions of dollars invested, will renew the workforce there and continue. So, you do go where the market is, but the U.S. is still a large market, slower growth, but actually this year it is growing, as opposed to Europe or other places like that. So it still is a very important market for us.
So, and I guess there are two strategies that would be available. One would be to bring people in from abroad to fill those jobs as your baby boomers retire. The other is to change the US education system to actually start producing more of the talent that you need. How do you see the environment on both of those two frontiers?
Yeah, so needing I'd like to see them staple a visa to every PhD that we give in the United States if they're not US citizens. Because these kids have come over and they're being educated at the best institutions in the world. But it's very difficult then to get them from a legal standpoint to stay. So modernizing our visa program is very important. And that might be a short-term resolution. But what we see a lot of times is they come to the United States to get educated, they work here. The reason they might come to a company like DuPont is they have an opportunity to go back and work in India. They have an opportunity to go back and work in Brazil. on important matters of science, and whether it's agriculture or energy or protection. And so we can give them a kind of a journey on their career as opposed to a single point destination, which makes us interesting as an employer. But we do, at the end of the day, have to, I think, up our game in terms of science and engineering from our own education system, because that's the only way you're going to make the math work if you look out a decade or 2 decades from now.
I mean, it seems like an almost intractable problem on both those frontiers, so that one, in the current political situation, education reform, I mean, everyone agrees there needs to be more STEM teaching, but it feels like it's almost impossible to change the system to move it. And likewise, on immigration, it seems like an absolute no-brainer to do what you suggest and stick a visa on a PhD, and yet that seems to be completely toxic in Washington. I mean, is there a more optimistic movement afoot that I'm not seeing?
Well, in order to have my job, you have to be an optimist. So that's otherwise it would kill you. But if you look at the education system, and we work in the communities where we operate, we work with the local education systems, and it might be with a community college to help create a 2-year curriculum in mechanical and electrical and computer skills so that high school graduates can get an associate's degree and come to work in a manufacturing plant. And because manufacturing plants are all computers these days, right? We work in the state of Delaware. We've been involved for 100 years or 200 years, but we helped work with the team to create the science curriculum in the schools. And one of the reasons that Delaware was one of the first 2 states to get the Race to the Top dollars was because of the work that we and other companies in Delaware, along with the community, have done to increase the science curriculum. Science curriculums have to change in this country. They have to change from kindergarten on. I was up in Boston at the Boston Museum of Science, and they've created a program called Engineering is Essential, and it's basically a curriculum starting in kindergarten through elementary school that brings the real world our kids live in and the issues that our kids face from a science standpoint into the classroom. Our science curriculum was largely invented, like much of our curriculum, in the 1890s. And the world was a different place. And we need to create modern curriculum. I think if you have that in grade school, you'll have more kids that don't say, well, engineering's too hard. You'll have them get more interested. You'll have them continue that through college and try it and get into engineering school. I mean, and I think that is what's going to be necessary. You're not going to fix it at the end of the pipe. You got to fix it at the beginning of the pipe. And I mean, we're 210 years old. We hope to be around at 300 years. And so for us, it's not a short-term fix we need. We need to create the long-term pipeline so that we get the wonderfully skilled engineers and scientists that we need for our company.
But you think if you look around America, there are examples of science curriculum that really are right up to date and engaging in the right way?
It's hard to leverage is the issue. There are pockets of it. And what I saw at the Boston Museum of Science for the first time was something that was largely leverageable. But it takes a lot of work. You have to integrate it into the local curriculum. And that's done on a state-by-state, almost district-by-district basis. So there's a lot of heavy lifting that has to occur. But the tools are starting to be created and come forward. And there's just a lot of wonderful people working on this issue. I just think we need to gain more momentum.
I mean, do you think the business community is doing enough to push this message and to help leverage and scale up the kind of good innovations that are going on around the curriculum?
When I am out, and meeting with my peers and other companies, it's an issue for every one of us that has a large proportion of science or engineering employees. We all see it. And we all are working on it in different ways. You see it in a lot of different companies and different industries, whether it's IT, whether it's oil. You see major companies making very large investments of time and people in order to be able to try to help.
One more question on this point about the retirement. I mean, do you think there's a potential to actually say to many of these people you're about to lose to retirement, hey, why not stay on another 10 years and you're going to live to be 100 anyway? Why retire now? And actually keep that experience in the workforce?
Well, for us, they've already worked 40 years for us because we tend to be a company that has a long years of service from our employee base. And for many of them, they want to go on and do other things. We have a tremendous amount of our retirees working in the local community for non-for-profits, working in the local community on issues, and it's sort of like they've started their second career. So yeah, we have 70-year-olds working for our company in this area, and they're wonderful, and I'd love to keep them. But many times it's their personal choice on how they want to live their lives. They want more flexibility. And we actually employ some of them back as consultants in a lot of areas, helping other companies with workplace safety or the like. So we do utilize the talent there, but there's that personal choice thing comes in and they want to move on.
Now, you are very much seen as a role model for many women who aspire to get to the top of corporate America. And one of the things that's very striking is that still very few women have broken through the glass ceiling to get to the very top. I mean, I wonder why that is from your perspective, and would you favor some of the ideas that you see in Europe taking hold now in terms of, particularly at board level, sort of quotas and things to get more women into boardrooms?
Well, I've never been one that's believed that quotas are a long-term solution. They may create some momentum short-term. We have 3 out of 11 on our board are women. It's something that I do believe. I worked even to get my senior executive women onto boards or into more and get more exposure. The CEO gets all the exposure. There's a tremendous number of very accomplished people and women at that next layer that can really do a lot of good for corporations. It's interesting because this is something that I struggle with, and I struggle with in my own company. And we're about 26% women in our company, about the same in the senior ranks of women. How can we get that? But women represent, 50% of the population, right? So how can we create an environment? When you look at the kids coming out of school day, regardless of gender, they want to understand that what they do matters. They want to understand the work-life situation or balance that they're going to have when they come to work for a company. We work very hard on those issues, and they might have started 20 years ago as us thinking about them as women's issues, but they're not women's issues, they're people issues. And we find as many men want to take time off when they have a child as women do, right? So, we've expanded our programs. We want to win the war on talent. So we want the kids today coming out of school to understand who DuPont is. Our focus on science to bring, solve problems that are very big in this world, like feeding the world or protecting people in the environment or creating alternatives to fossil fuel that can help create more energy security for countries. We have phenomenal programs going on in our company that kids resonate with because they think it's going to help the world become a better place. And so we focus not only on recruiting, but retaining. And hopefully that will create more opportunities, and for women we'll find it, as it does for everybody. But I do think that's an issue that we need to continue to understand the root cause. I'm not sure I understand the root cause of it, and continue to drive.
There's this debate, and Adrian's going to be having a discussion about it later with Anna Marie Slaughter, that amongst a group of successful professional women with young families at the moment, Sheryl Sandberg on the other side, about whether women can have it all nowadays. What do you think? Can women have it all?
Well, I think that each woman defines what all means for themselves. I don't think there's a blanket definition of what all is that's the same for me as it is for the next person. I've made choices in my life. It's about choices you make. I have 3 kids, right? And I've made choices in my life, and I'm very happy with those choices. And
like what, for example?
Choices in, there were times in my life I chose a job that had less travel because my kids were at an age where I wanted to be home more, or my husband had a job that was more travel. So, I've navigated it, but I've done it my way. And what the right answer for me is different than for others, than Sheryl Sandberg or any woman. And I think that the problem we have is we're trying to create a standard definition for what all means, and there is none. I don't know two men that would describe what having it all means that are the same. And so I think we're putting a false, assertion out there, and I think, we focus on it too much. The men define that for themselves.
But you don't think there is any, I mean, I suppose underlying the whole struggle for equality in the workplace has been the notion that women were being shut out of certain roles and that certain roles weren't being made available to them. I mean, that, you'd accept that, though, would you?
Well, I've been an advocate, and when I mentor or give advice to young women or anyone coming up through the ranks, I think that they have to have their voice. They have to be really clear about what they want. If they want that job, they have to go ask for it. They can't just expect it. And I was very clear coming up through my career that I wanted to run a business, and I got the opportunity to. And then it's about building your credibility and all of those things. I think that people have to have a voice. I've been lucky to work in a company that was, very egalitarian. I mean, it was, and felt supported. I had twins, so I had 3 kids under the age of 4 at one point during my career. I felt very supported by the company. And that creates, I think for me, a tremendous amount of loyalty to the people, to the company, and you just work through it.
Do you think, I mean, as you've sat on corporate boards, I mean, the characterization that these are often, very, very much boys' clubs, that the men are very much kind of, they don't really challenge each other. It's the CEO's friends.
Yeah,
I mean, is that critique still valid?
Well, I can tell you that that is not the way it operates today at any, at our company, at any company I've been associated with. Boards are very accomplished people. For the most part, my board members, I meet them when I'm starting to consider them for the board, right? And the board's considering them, and we're looking at their qualifications. Can they bring a global perspective? Can they bring perspective from different vantage points than what the company has? Because what you want is that diversity of opinion to help create a really solid strategy and future for the company. So, I don't know if that's a throwback to years ago, but it certainly isn't the way we operate today.
Now, unfortunately, our time is pretty much up, but I wanted to ask, if you were advising a young woman or man about to sort of go to college, about to start their career, where they should focus their efforts, and where, if they were going to stand the best chance of prospering in the labour market of the next 30 years or so, someone who you could picture as yourself at that age, similar ambitions and so forth. I mean, where would you direct them? What advice?
Engineering,
would you give
right? So, okay, so I'm an engineer, so I'll, truth in advertising here. Engineering gave me a set of skills around problem solving and how to approach things from a team basis that really helped me. And then I went back at night and got a master's in business, and that helped as well. But I had solid technical understanding, skills, problem-solving capability that was an enabler for me to, I think, go in a lot of different ways in my career. I could have chosen to get a law degree and become a patent attorney, tremendous area of growth. But science jobs, so a statistic, at the depth of the global financial crisis, unemployment in engineers was about 6.2%, when general unemployment was over 10. And so it's just an area, global financial crisis, we had to downsize, we had to get more productive. We didn't cut one research and development program. And so science is important in the world, and science is going to help solve a lot of the problems of the world. So I'd be pitching engineering or science.
And would you, armed with that engineering degree, would you set out to work in America, or would you go to India or China or somewhere?
See, I'd go to work for DuPont.
Right.
I'd be a little self-serving. But, global company, very diverse set of businesses, utilizes a very diverse set of sciences and business models. And so you can start in as you know, in a advanced materials business, life-saving things like Kevlar vests. You can then move into electronic materials, handheld.
But would you want to get foreign experience? Would you want?
Yeah, you can go into China, Taiwan, Brazil. We have research centers all over the world. We have engineering centers. We have sales and marketing centers all over the world, plant sites. So we can provide a journey that can allow an individual to grow and develop and really get a tremendous number of experiences. So I go to work for DuPont.
And do you think you would also, one last question, do you think you would also end up spending most of your career at that one company then?
Well, I didn't. I had 3 companies in my career. But I think that depends on the individual and the personal choices they want to make about how they want to live their life. If they are connected to a local community, then maybe one company makes sense or doesn't make sense. If they're very adventurous and want to live around the world. So I think that's where that personal choice about how one lives their life has to come in, and that'll take care of that.
Okay, well, thank you. Unfortunately, our time is up, Ellen.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.